I wanna try and take in all the highs, embrace them for more than a moment's time. I want you, please don't move when I push you away. I know I contradict myself some days, but will you ride the lows with me?
Welcome to Mental Health News Radio. I am your host, Kristin and Walker. Our goal is to help discussions about mental health be a regular part of your daily life, no different than discussions about physical health. Mental illness can be a topic of discussion under the umbrella of mental health, along with so many other topics. This show is the original program on mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com. Our network of shows are played in over 180 countries and cover more topics under that umbrella than you can possibly imagine. We were talking about mental health long before it became cool and popular to talk about, and thank goodness it has become so popular. We have incredible guests, advocates, patients, experts, people. Thank you for tuning in and enjoy our intro music, a song named Lows, written by Aubrey Toon. You can find her music at www.aubreytoone.com.
That night when I started praying, I cried. Will you ride the lows with me? Will you ride the lows with me? When I'm down, my vision gets blurry.
Hi, everyone. We are back with our mental health business show, and my co-host, Dave Ballenberger, is our guest. We're going to do a 4-episode series. Dave's going to talk about what that's going to be on. We'll break these down into smaller soundbite shows so that you can retain the information, because it's a lot of information. But first, let me welcome Dave. Hi, Dave.
Hi, how you doing, Kristin?
Pretty good. Can you update everybody on what your background is in mental health?
I started in social services in 1972. Gives you an idea how old I am. During the 40 years that I've been working in behavioral health, I started out as a direct care worker, went to being a consultant for positive peer culture, group therapy program for delinquent youth, went from there to work at running group homes in Detroit, went to graduate school at Wayne State University, came out, started a substance abuse program for adolescents, and then became the executive director of Camp Oakland Youth Programs for 13 years. From there, I started day treatment programs in various counties in Michigan, and then ran Rose Hill Center for 11 years as in a psychiatric rehab program. Worked for Odyssey House in there someplace, and which was a TC, therapeutic community for substance abusers, and ended up being the president of Next Step Solutions for 12 years. Now I am on my own and wanting to do more work in population-based care.
Right. And this is a man who says all the time, from the whole time I've known you, that you're going to retire. And it took a long time before you actually retired. And you're not actually retired, because now you're a consultant helping agencies with things like what we're talking about today.
Yeah, I wouldn't say I'm quite retired. I work
Exactly.
with a program in Detroit called Lake Ridge Village. And I have been working with Pastor Williams for about the past 12 years. But all the things I'm trying to do, I'm using his program as my laboratory to see if things work.
Yeah, and that makes a huge difference, especially for our topic today, which is about, go ahead, Dave.
Yeah, today I really wanted to focus on talking about population-based care in terms of what is it and what does it mean. As we move more into value-based payment, which is coming, I do believe that if the pandemic hadn't have happened and we weren't having all these other issues, it would be coming quicker, because CMS is rewriting their rules. Some states like Arizona have gone completely to value-based care, as well as New York State which has also gone to value-based care. And it presents a challenge or a dilemma for programs in terms of how you're going to get paid in the future, what's going to happen. You're going to have to be able to demonstrate that what you did to help a person actually worked, and that person, for example, substance abuse remains clean, mental health is able to function in the community. So actually what we're talking about, and I'll get into more on this on different shows, but we're actually talking about helping a person learn how to function in the community with their diagnosis, which is not the way over the years that we've typically written treatment plans. We've written them based on the diagnosis and not really on how this person functions in the community. Because when we start talking about population-based care, first thing you'd have to look at is you would need to focus on your entire population and not just the person seeking care. If you're an agency that serves 2,000 people in a year, depending upon what you do, you're going to have to take a look at all 2,000, not the 200 that are just currently coming into your offices to see a therapist or to see a person, or if it's a residential program, who are not in your beds anymore. Because it's going to be a matter of breaking these groups down into subgroups in relationship to how they're going to be treated. Because remember, as you get more into population-based care and you get more into value-based payment, you're talking about how are you going to be paid in the future. And you're going to be paid on the basis, again, of being able to demonstrate that whatever you did worked, that you did it efficiently, and that you got it done in a certain period of time. The days of calling up the insurance company and getting 34 visits approved, they're not going to happen anymore. It's going to go away.
Right.
So we're going to see this affect all kinds of care, not all care in terms of human services. Value-based payment, population-based care has been going on in the primary medical health area for a long time. When someone comes in with a broken leg, a doctor has a prescribed method to fix that leg. And there's steps that he or she is supposed to take, and that person is supposed to get better within a period of time and not show up in the emergency room saying their leg still hurts.
Right.
Working with someone, a substance abuser or any mental health, you're going to have to take a closer look at comorbid conditions in terms of what are the other negative things that are affecting this person getting better. And you start talking about integrated care. So, and again, it's not just the person seeking care. And the population would include not only those actively seeking care or the ones that need the most support. You have to look at everyone because you're going to be breaking these groups down into low risk, high risk, and then the group that's constantly growing in risk based upon what behaviors they're demonstrating. So if I have a lot of people coming into my program who are diabetic and I put that on their care plan, then I need to be putting something down in the care plan that indicates what I'm doing to help them with that comorbid issue or problem. If I have a substance abuser coming in, then I also have to look to see if that person also mentally ill. We still have substance abuse programs who claim that they're not going to work with the mental illness. They're only going to work with the substance abuse.
When substance abuse is something that is underneath the mental health umbrella.
Yes, it is. But that's not the way all programs are approaching it. I many times have gone into substance abuse agencies to put in software or install software. And when I talk to them about their program and you bring up mental health, well, we send them someplace else. Oh, okay. Do you know what they're doing at that other agency to help them with their mental health? Well, no, that's not our problem. Well, that's not really the case, because in a value-based program, you have to be aware of what's going on with that individual, both in your program and outside your program. So there has to be a connection. There has to be a connection between your program and the other places that person might be going for care. Another part too is it's critical to understand your entire, and I know I keep talking about population, but this is this is value-based care, and where service gaps may exist. And again, if I'm serving, again, a large group of people and I have them in a residential program, I need to be looking at social determinants of health, which there's 12 social determinants of health. And, they vary in terms of what's going on with a person. An example would be housing, employment, or primary healthcare needs. A lot of times when agencies are working with folks, again, you have to look at all factors that are affecting the environment of where this person lives, what they do, what it's like there, and what's going on, which also leads the agency that's treating that person into finding or providing other kinds of services. Because when you start to look at service gaps, you're going to find other opportunities for business, in terms of, what you're doing. So there's a lot of things to consider and a lot of things to look at as we go down the road.
I have a question for you, Dave. I understand, you used someone coming in with a broken leg. That is an example. I'm not a doctor. I'm not a physician, so forgive a rudimentary question. But, a broken leg is something that, you can follow what's going on and you can treat it. It's very different than someone who has a mental illness. So what are the rules that you've read around how a behavioral health provider is going to, prove that what they have done has helped this person when something like depression is, not like a broken leg that you can put a cast on and it's going to heal other, than some, crazy circumstances, but it's, there's a path to healing with that is very different than there is in mental health.
Yeah, and that's why it's really important, as you begin to develop this, that you actually do break your population up into subgroups, because there's depression and then there's depression. There's different levels of depression. So
Right.
if I have someone who's severely depressed, they might be in a high risk group. And what you're going to look at in terms of when you break these groups up is what's best practice,
Right.
what works with that particular group of people. And, then you get into the concept of a lot of what's going to happen is going to be very, very data driven. So you have to have the ability, either because you're not going to do this on paper, but you're going to have the ability in your software to break people up into subgroups, and you might do something like risk stratification. And risk stratification is the process of separating patient populations into high risk, low risk, and the ever important rising risk groups. So if I have a low risk group, well, what would I do? How would I provide best practice services to them, given that they're at low risk right now for maybe their substance abuse problem to get worse, or they're managing their mental illness. I've worked in working at Lake Ridge. I've found that there are people who come in that actually are doing a very good job of managing their illness, even though they're a substance abuser. They recognize their symptoms. They recognize when they're having the symptoms. Now, is that everybody? No. There's some people who come in that are obviously mentally ill that don't want to admit that or don't want to deal with it. So what group would they be in? So when you're setting this up, you have to take a look at what are the common characteristics for people that come into your agency? What are the things that you want to know so you can break these people up into groups that you can treat as a group? The days of, I think when you look at therapy, and I've seen this many times, is that, a particular person has a therapy that they really think is wonderful. And so everybody that ends up on their caseload gets treated exactly the same way. Or somebody that goes into a residential program, the residential program has a program. And, not everybody responds well to sitting in 7 or 8 groups a day,
Right.
talking about their substance abuse. And at the end of the day, again, you're going to have to be able to demonstrate that if that's what you choose for them to do they get better? Are they not using anymore? Is their attitude different? So a lot of this has to do with data collection. It has to do with assessment. It has to do with measurement, which again has to be built into whatever you're using to gather and pull data and keep track of what's going on with your caseload.
How is it used? How is it being done, before this change? What was the way that a provider needed to put information in and to track in order to get paid?
Well, it was fee for service.
Okay.
Somebody, like if you go into a residential bed, a lot of places, they're paying you something for the person to be in the bed. But then again, they're paying you something else for providing them with a group, with once a week, see the therapist sort of a thing. And that's really going to go away. And you're really going to have to rethink your program. And part of this is you're going to have to take a look at, what do we do the best? What is the best thing we do? So if you're substance abuse, then where do we get the best bang for the buck in terms of treating people with a substance abuse problem? I know one of the things we're doing at Lakeridge right now is when we look at a person coming into the program, we're beginning to form partnerships with other agencies. When I say partnership, I mean clinical partnership, not dollars, but where we could refer that person to that program for a specific service that we don't provide. What we don't do that. But to do that, you have to be a way of pulling that data back in so you can get measurement. So no matter what that plan is, if I'm got someone who comes in and maybe they need an ACT team for some reason when they go to work, or they're out in the community, they might need some support, then what the ACT team do? Was it effective? Did it work? And one of the things we're terrible at is that agencies are all, they wouldn't want to admit it, they're all in competition with each other for a really small group of people, in terms of providing services. The behavioral health community, if you sat down, I know just in Wayne County, whenever anybody says they're going to change everything, when you go back and look, all the same people are there, just have different jobs.
Right.
You ever seen that, Kristin?
Yeah, I have seen that, and I always find it fascinating. I've seen it from being a volunteer working in and out of psych wards and mental health centers, and I've seen it as someone working on the EHR side with that same group.
Yeah, exactly. So this is something again that we have to get away with. Crisis Prep, which is a program in Arizona, they've probably actually formed a group of other providers who provide services that they don't. And so what happens is that your therapist or your primary therapist also is doing case management, in terms of making a referral somewhere where they're not going to do that. That agency, Crisis Prep, is not going to provide that service, but somebody else might. And so you really have to look at, again, what do we do the best? At the end of the day, and this is where it gets kind of difficult, once you figure that out, You may not need all the people you currently have on staff. You may have to take a look at how are we going to keep the agency alive. I think, and this will be real difficult for the smaller provider. But let's get back to data-driven care. Having a platform to stratify patients according to risk is going to be the success. That's what's going to make behavioral health management work. You're going to really have to take a look at who you serve and what you're currently doing and how that works. The other thing you're going to have to look at real hard too is, and although we all say we're doing evidence-based care, are we? Or are we doing the care that we're the most comfortable with?
Right.
Which I think is what happens a lot. What we are comfortable with and our staff is comfortable with is what we do. We really take a look at what's the evidence tell us about what works the best with a certain population? You have to leverage the best available evidence to guide treatment decisions and the delivery of care. And what that boils down to, what works? Is cognitive behavioral therapy the best for everybody? Is dialectical behavioral therapy the best for everybody? See, and these are the questions, you're going to have to ask yourself, because again, you're going to have to look at how many people, how many staff is it going to take for me to provide this, and how am I going to get measurement? Because you're going to have to create evidence-based protocols that should be followed within your organization. If I have a team meeting of all my staff, I don't want to be talking about, and we're working with a population or 3 different populations based on risk. I don't want to talk about 14 different therapies that we're doing with each of these populations. I want to be talking about what's the best practice that we all decided was the best way to treat this group of people. And then, so what happens then is you're going to have to create care pathways, to ensure successful implementation for your staff and your team. So that it becomes a question of, if Joe Smith is in low risk, and again, I'll go back to substance abuse, but he's a substance abuser, and he now he was using 2 times a week. Now he's using 4 times a week. Should I move him up into a higher risk group?
Right.
Or should I take a look at, because if that's what's happening, then what I'm doing isn't working. So then do I go back and take a look at the care plan, treatment plan, and see do I need to make changes in that treatment plan? Because when we get into payment and we start talking about how you're going to get paid in a value-based model, people are going to show up on your doorstep. They're going to want to look at your charts, and they're going to say, well, you didn't accomplish what you said you were going to accomplish. You owe us X.
Mm.
And so that's what's going to happen down the road as we go down the highway, because bottom line, value-based payment's about saving money and about spending money more effectively than possibly people are right now. And then the other part of this too is going to be case management. You're actually going to have to do what's being called actionable case management, which means that if someone comes in to see me and I'm also doing case management with this person, actionable means that I can track whatever it is I'm doing with that person in the community or sending them for treatment. And that's where you start talking about interoperability between pieces of software and being able to share information, making sure that you're meeting all the HIPAA requirements as you're doing this. But again, it's data. If you don't have the data, you're not going to be successful in a value-based model. And it's also about population management and population care, in terms of how that's going to be driven and what direction you're going to go in relationship to treatment services.
How many EHRs that you're aware of have made changes to their program to be able to track this kind of information in their system?
I haven't seen any yet.
Hmm.
It doesn't mean that they're not out there. Because remember, what the EHR has to do besides track data, it also has to give you the ability to actually write or create a care plan for that individual. And then it has to have the ability in it to track whatever it is you're doing, so you can follow it. And then how are you creating measurement? Is it your best guess, or are you using some type of a assessment, some type of a way to determine whether or not that individual is actually getting better? And the other thing you have to remember too is this all has to be done in a very cost-effective way. So if you put people into a high-risk group, what best practices have worked best with this particular group of people? I think about one agency that worked with in the past that took very, very chronically mentally ill folks. And these were people that, if there were still state hospitals in Michigan, they would be in them. So how do you take that group, break it down into subgroups, and then determine whether or not that person has made progress in the period of time that we're with you so that you get paid? So that's part of the challenge, so that the software has to be able to give back that particular information to the provider, in terms, and I hate to go, I don't want to go into next show. You know what I mean,
Right.
Kristin?
Yes, absolutely.
But I think as far as, population and, the base care and evidence-based care, these are all things that we often hear about. Like, we're doing evidence-based care. All right. What does that mean? What are you doing? Are your therapists all following the same protocols in terms of providing that particular type of care? So if you're doing CBT, is everybody doing CBT? If you're doing motivational interviewing, is everybody doing motivational interviewing? So it's almost like you have to be able to follow, and you have to be very consistent about how care is provided and how often it's provided, and whether a person is actually getting better in that process, because that's a lot of what this is about.
It sounds very homogenized.
Yes. It won't be, and I think too, when you kind of look at what we're doing now, because right now everything's fee for service. And CMS may be rewriting their rules around value-based payment. I don't think too many states are actually rewriting their rules.
Yeah.
And even if you look at Arizona, yes, they said they went to value-based payment, but did they change the rules? Did they
Right.
change the rules about being licensed as a provider? Did they change the rules about how you get paid and what kind of data you got to turn into them? I don't think they have. I think they've just decided they're going to go to value-based payment. Another example here in Wayne County, Detroit, community mental health decided that they were going to go into value-based payment. So they made all current providers submit an RFP to keep their contract, and then CMH would decide, well, who gets a contract. 48 providers did not get a contract because CMH decided that this is all the service that they needed. And I remember a meeting I had in Indiana with the doctor who was in charge of service delivery for Blue Cross Blue Shield in that state. And his bottom line was, well, if we decide that we need a program like an ACT program, and we only need X amount of ACT program, and there's 18 agencies providing it, 12 or 13 of them aren't going to be contracted with us. It's only going to be the level of care that we need And that's what's going to happen too as we go down the road. So it's real critical in terms of you can't wait until the day that people decide they're going to go to value-based payment. These are things that you should be doing right now.
Right.
You
And
know,
making sure that you're using a system that can accommodate most of what's needed, which you
yeah.
have a, you know, you have several success stories, but one in particular that, made that switch. I believe they're in Arizona and they're doing very well with it, but they are way ahead of the curve.
Oh yeah, crisis prep and recovery is way ahead of the curve. I mean, they're working for insurance companies now. They actually have people in the doctor's office working directly with the medical team to provide also integrated care in relationship to social services. Therapy, treatment, and taking a look at the whole comorbid piece in terms of what other things are you looking at besides the fact that they might be a diabetic, they might have high blood pressure. What are the negatives that prevent them from actually dealing with that? So again, if you were looking at that relationship to population health management, you'd be looking at what are the risk levels with this particular patient in relationship to their primary needs, primary medical needs, as well as their behavioral health needs. And what are the chances of us helping them get better, being successful? So that helps you determine which risk group should they be placed in. What's their history? What have they done? What are the kinds of things they've done in the past? They have high blood pressure. Do they continue to eat things that aren't appropriate? Do they continue to use illegal substances, drink? What are they doing? And these are the things that you're going to have to know in order to know which care path you're going to need to go down to help this person get better.
Dave, so for the next show, can you just tell us what we're going to cover?
What we're going to cover next time is we're going to take a look at some of the components of population healthcare. I've mentioned them a little bit, but I want to talk some more about those in terms of what that's going to look like as you go down the road with this and what that piece is going to look like. Because, it's going to be challenging. And can it be done? I think so. Lots of people will be out there talking about the fact, well, this isn't really treatment. Well, yeah, it is. It's picking the best assumed treatment that you think will work with a particular issue or set of problems versus everybody doing the same thing every day, when somebody comes into their program, which happens a lot.
Right. Well, listeners, anyone, organization, or individual that needs help with this kind of understanding of what's happening and what will be happening, we get a little bit of a break because everything to do with the pandemic has just backlogged the mental health system. It is the one area of of our healthcare system in mental health that is, has been just flooded with people needing treatment. Just a lot of trauma, stress, PTSD, suicidal ideation, et cetera, has, gone through the roof because of the pandemic. That's caused a lot of organizations and, the organizations that are pushing value-based care. It's caused that to just kind of stay in a holding status in some ways, but it will catch up at some point. So being, like Dave just said, being prepared for it ahead of time is what's going to make it work. So if your organization needs help with understanding these services, setting it up, if your EHR is, ready to help you with this kind of change, with how you deliver care, you can email info@mhnrnetwork.com and we can get you to Dave Ballenberger so he can work with you. Dave, thank you so much. And I look forward to our next show.
And thank you, Kristin.
Thank you, listeners, for tuning in to another episode of Mental Health Business on Mental Health News Radio.
Hi, listeners. I'll make it quick. These are some really cool places that give discounts and other cool things for listeners of Mental Health News Radio Network. If you want to get amazing help with healing from narcissistic abuse, go to healfromanarcissist.com. If you want CBD products that are the best of the best, I use them myself, go to proze.com and use the code mentalhealth20, mentalhealth20. If you want to get daily perk ups that help retrain your brain to think more positively, go to perkupdaily.com. And also, just because this one's fun, snarkycandles.com. I guarantee you'll love them. Snarky with a Y, SNARKY, candles.com. And don't forget, if you want to hear all the shows on the network about first responders, you can go to firstrespondermentalhealthnetwork.com, and all of our shows that focus on narcissistic abuse, narcissistabusehealingnetwork.com. Thanks for listening, and back to the show.
But will you ride the low, low, lows with me? Will you ride the low, low, lows with me?
One thing you can always count on at Mental Health News Radio Network and my show is that there will always be dogs around. Why? They are natural healers, excellent for your mental health. The original therapy dog Miles has something to say in just a moment. For now, please check out all of our amazing shows at mentalhealthnewsradionetwork.com and all your favorite podcast apps. Until next time, I'm Kristin Walker, and thank you for listening.
Me tonight, and I can ride the low, low, lows with me. I can ride the low, low, lows with me. Till my vision clears up perfectly. I can ride the low, low, lows with me.
Good boy.